Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we are diving into a really fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying predictive history scenario. We're asking a big question. What happens when a flawless textbook military strike accidentally triggers total global economic chaos? We're going to break down a geopolitical simulation that literally flips our conventional understanding of modern warfare completely on its head.
It brings up this massive, almost impossible paradox. Think about it. How does the strongest military on Earth win a war that it simply cannot afford to finish? This analysis walks us through a scenario where, on paper, you get a total victory, but in reality, that victory actually traps the winner in an unwinnable, economically devastating situation.
All right, let's start with part one, the decapitation strike and the paradox.
So according to this predictive model, things kick off with just overwhelming force in February 2026. We're talking over 900 U.S. airstrikes taking out leadership and shredding the Air Force right out of the gate. By day 5, 30 warships are sunk. I mean, it is a knockout punch. But within 48 hours, the opposing military decentralizes. By early March, a major global waterway is closed and global shipping insurance just vanishes. We go from a swift, precise strike to complete global system failure in literally a matter of weeks.
Now, you might be wondering why they thought this would work. Well, the initial strategy relied heavily on traditional military doctrine, basically the decapitation playbook. The logic feels really simple, right? You kill the leader, the regime collapses, everyone goes home. It's exactly the playbook used on Saddam Hussein. Military planners assumed that taking out the 86-year-old supreme leader and hitting key command centers would instantly end the conflict.
But that takes us to Section 2, Decentralized Retaliation.
Here's where things go completely off the rails. Ideology totally upends that standard American strategy. See, the decapitation doctrine relies on a rigid top-down structure. Cut off the head, the body dies. But in this scenario, the supreme leader's death isn't viewed as a military defeat. It's seen as martyrdom. So instead of collapsing, it instantly triggers this decentralized command across autonomous regional cells. And while you just cannot decapitate an enemy that no longer has a single head.
And honestly, this is the cruelest irony of the whole operation. By focusing airstrikes on progressive cities like Tehran, Isfahan, and Tabriz, the strikes actually eliminate the exact populations that would be most likely to support regime change from the inside. Meanwhile, the religious hardliners, the guys who are perfectly willing to fight to their last breath, they stay safely embedded up in the mountains, completely untouched. The strike wipes out potential internal allies and radicalizes basically everyone else.
Let's move on to Section 3, the Gulf state vulnerability.
So the decentralized retaliation doesn't just go after America directly. Instead, it surgically targets its wallet, the petrodollar system. Think of Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain as the invisible scaffolding holding up American financial power. They sell oil in US dollars and pump that money right back into the American economy. But in this scenario, they're also hosting the military bases used for the strikes. So from the retaliatory perspective, these nations become 100% legitimate targets.
And here's the kicker. Targeting them doesn't mean leveling their cities. These Gulf cities are absolute engineering marvels, but they're built on the fatal assumption that they will never actually be attacked. Take Dubai, for example. It relies on a 90% foreign expat workforce. These people hold employment visas, not deep national loyalty. Launch a few drones, terrify the expats into fleeing, and scare off the insurance companies. Once those expats pack their bags, the whole city basically just stops functioning.
Which leads us straight into Section 4, Closing the Strait. This is where the ultimate choke point comes in. The Strait of Hormuz is incredibly narrow. It's just a 21-mile wide hallway. Yet, a staggering 20% of the world's daily oil supply squeezes through it every single day. In this predictive model, on March 2nd, the retaliation shuts this door entirely, using hidden, locked-on drones and missiles.
The immediate fallout? Bam! Brent crude oil instantly blows past $100, peaking at a devastating $126 a barrel. The shockwave to the global economy is just instantaneous. Just imagine the overnight price explosion at your local gas pump. We're seeing empty shelves at the grocery store.
But it builds into an even deeper crisis, because we usually only think about the oil leaving. But the strait is a two-way street, right? Yes, oil stops flowing out to critical economies like Japan, India, and China. But at the same time, critical supplies, food, medicine, industrial goods, they stop flowing in. The American empire basically built its regional center of gravity in a desert that literally cannot feed itself without open shipping lanes.
So with this massive threat, war risk insurance policies skyrocket. We're talking premiums jumping to $5 million just for a single trip. Because of that, commercial tanker traffic plummets by a staggering 81% in just 1 week.
Okay, let's look at Section 5, the drone economics.
You've got to look at this math because it is a total nightmare for the U.S. An attack drone costs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000, but the Patriot interceptor missile required to shoot it down, $4 million. You're spending, actually scratch that, the U.S. is spending up to $200 to shoot down every single dollar the enemy spends on a drone. Plus, drones can be churned out in the hundreds and launched from a hidden flatbed truck. Patriots take 30 minutes to set up, and they're so huge you can see them from space.
This completely exposes a profound flaw in military doctrine. You have a defense industry built for the Cold War that profits from making the most expensive, static, terrifying weapons imaginable. But modern asymmetric warfare, it relies on cheap, highly mobile, brutal swarms. It's literally like taking a massive bodybuilder who's never been in a real fight and throwing him into a cage with a scrappy lightning-fast fighter half his size. All that expensive muscle suddenly becomes a massive liability.
Finally, we reach Section 6, the Empire's Trap.
So how does the final trap spring? Well, 3 weeks in, as the global economy is absolutely screaming, President Trump threatens to bomb energy infrastructure if the strait isn't reopened. But the opposition calls the bluff. They refuse to flinch. So the U.S. is forced to postpone the strikes entirely. A new supreme leader steps up, consolidates power, and this grinding war of attrition just continues. The regime didn't collapse, it hardened.
It is the ultimate lose-lose scenario. The U.S. is just trapped. Walking away means destroying the Gulf states' faith in American protection, which permanently cracks the vital petrodollar system. But staying means bleeding millions of dollars every single day just to shoot down cheap drones. Instead of a swift victory, the global economy bleeds from a self-inflicted wound, and the opposing regime is more consolidated than ever before.
Which brings us to this final, really provocative thought from the source analysis. An empire founded by war has to maintain itself by war. It really makes you wonder, what happens to the strongest military in the world when it can no longer afford the math of its own defense? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the deeper mechanics of our world. See you next time.